having been this far away from an anaconda, he paddled across the Amazon River. He cycled across an entire continent when he was in grade 9. He is in the Canada Hall of Fame. He hunts his own meat. He is his own pilot. He built his own house. On top of that, he has a master's degree in the University of Waterloo. He has a bachelor's in Simon Fraser University and the University of Alberta. Mr. Devries, his name is Greg, I just feel uncomfortable calling him that, has been one of the most influential teachers I've met in high school. He's a fantastic human being, and I'm excited to share with you what he said on the podcast, The Inca. So I'm your host, Manuel, and I am stoked to finally release this video, so I hope you enjoy it. Man, I'm nervous. I've been talking about this for a minute.
A minute?
Yeah, how come I bring this up like 2 weeks ago? All right. So, thank you for agreeing to be on this podcast, Mr. Reese. Really appreciate it. So I have a few questions to sort of start off with, and I would like this podcast to sort of focus on like your life experiences. But I do want to ask these questions. So, for these first questions, can they sort of be like fast, rapid, just top of your head?
Okay, I have to respond fast.
Not like super fast. Like you can take time to think. But
okay.
Let's not take like half an hour.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So, what do you do in your free time?
I go hunting, I go hiking, I go paddleboarding, I bicycle, play pickleball, hang out with my family, play board games.
How did you get into hunting?
I grew up hunting, providing food for the family.
That's like a source of like nutrition for you guys. Like, do you do groceries, or is it just like because of people?
No, absolutely. I mean, we did groceries, yeah, but like when I had 3 kids at home, we raised our own chickens. I would fish enough, and I would hunt enough that we never bought meat.
That would
save a lot of money.
I bet it did. What choice of weapon is your go-to?
Well, I typically hunt with a 308. A lever action 308.
Have you ever thought of like hunting with a bow and arrow?
Yes, I've been very tempted to get into it, but it's really hard.
I've heard.
And I'm not skilled enough to do so yet.
Do you see that happening in the future?
I was super tempted to buy a bow and arrow this year, but didn't, so probably in a year or 2.
Did that happen because of nose injury?
No.
No?
That didn't stop me.
All right. More on that later. So, what has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned so far in life?
Most valuable lesson?
Yeah.
Probably that the things that happen in your life, while they may seem random, you are in control of how you react to them, and you are often in control of the scenarios. Like, while accidents happen, our reaction to those is under our control.
That reminded me of a quote I heard one time. I forget who it's by, but it goes, "It's not your fault what happens to you, but it's your responsibility to deal with it."
Absolutely. Yeah. We can't just stay and wallow in it, right? I mean, trauma is still trauma, but we still have to find a way to deal with it and move forward.
All right. And how do you want to be remembered? Like when in years from now, when like your students are all like grown up, like how do you want us to look back at you?
Well, there's a lot of things in that question. I would like to be remembered as being fair.
Fair.
Yeah. Being honest, being challenging, that I push people to their limits, but in the interest of their betterment. And ideally, I would like to have been a light, an example for the faith that I believe in.
Good. Interesting you mentioned that, because you remember that book you gave me about to spend a year living with Christ?
Mm-hmm.
It's getting interesting.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think what you're saying is definitely part of how I remember you.
You kind of laughed at fair. You don't think I'm fair?
No, I think because when most people get questioned, they respond to like kind or like, but you want to be remembered as fair. I think that's very unique.
Fair is kind.
Fair is kind, yeah.
Well, I would like to think I'm kind, but I think there is a quote that if you challenge students to think, they actually don't like you. They don't like thinking. But I don't believe that that's a good thing. Like if we're in education, we have to make kids think, right? We gotta push their boundaries, in which case there are gonna be kids that just don't like me. They don't think I'm kind because I'm forcing them to think.
Yeah.
So
it can be a problem for sure. And when you're in like a classroom and you find that there's like the majority of the kids are in a state of energy where they just don't want to get work done, right? Like maybe it's the end of the day on a Friday. Like how would you encourage them to do work? Like what's your strategy?
Oof, what's my strategy to get kids to do work?
Yeah, do you have like a process, or do you just sort of wing it?
I don't necessarily have a process. I guess my ideal thing is that they have intrinsic motivation to achieve what they set their minds to. And so some people's goals are extremely meaningful to them, so they will work. Whether they take that time off on Friday, then they'll make it up on Saturday. Other kids won't do the work, right? I can think of many different students that just won't do the work. They complain that it's too hard, which it is. It is hard. But if it's worth learning, it's going to push your boundaries, right? If you want to be an athlete, you're going to have to go and push yourself beyond where you're comfortable. If you only ever do what you're comfortable with, you won't really increase your capacity, whether that's in mathematics or piano or hunting, whatever it is. You got to push beyond your normal boundaries.
100%. I think there's only so much as like a teacher or a supervisor you could do when the person you're trying to help doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
Like,
so I guess my ideal, or not my ideal, but my go-to thing is to hold up a mirror. A mirror of saying, hey, you do realize you're not doing anything right now. Like, I'll call them out. You know, I call them out all the time. And the fact is, it's not because I'm trying to put them down. I just am trying to make sure that they understand what they're doing. And if that's nothing, then you need to understand you're doing nothing, and you will bear those consequences. Not because I'm going to hold it against you, but because if you don't spend the time learning, those consequences will come back in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not with me, maybe in your future.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I've definitely, like, you just shone a new light on when you do call us out. It's not that you're trying to embarrass us, not that I thought you were doing that before, but like you just want us to succeed, so you just want us to refocus.
Yeah.
And I think the way you're doing it is just fantastic. Like when I got called out, I'm like, damn.
Well, I know it doesn't work for every kid, so I know that there's a variety of students that will have walked out of my rooms kind of thinking that I'm a jerk or whatever.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if that's the case, I'm sorry, but I still stand by what I do, because I treat my students the same way I treat my kids. And if they're when I came through education, the phrase was in loco parentis, and that's Latin for saying you're the replacement parent. If I'm the replacement parent, then I got to treat every student like my kid. In which case, if I see my kid doing nothing when he's supposed to be doing something, I'm going to call him out, because it's not okay. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to stand up for what I think is right and try to enforce that.
Yeah. So you must really enjoy teaching like upper classroom classes like calculus, whereas like the people who are in this class like want to be here.
Yes, definitely. Calculus is my favorite class for that reason, and because
we know
I really get to push your brains.
Yeah.
Like, even though you guys are highly successful students and have learned so much in the past and been so successful, I'm still able to push your brains beyond that, and I like that. I like pushing my brain. It's fun.
And what advice would you give to your younger self? Like say 10 years old.
10 years old?
10 years old.
It would have been to look beyond teaching for your career. Expand your horizons as to the different options that you can do. There's so many different cool things that you can do. You have the brain to do it, and I think that's true of any of my students. You have the brain to do it. Right now we're learning calculus, but it's just calculus. If you can learn calculus, you can learn pretty much anything. Where you want to learn, what do you want to pursue, go explore it. Check it out.
And if you weren't a teacher, what do you think you'd be? Like I know you got your pilot license.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be your mathematician for NASA maybe?
No, I would not be a mathematician for NASA. You know, I really enjoy probability, and if I had been exposed to where I could have taken probability study, I may have gone into like actuarial sciences, which is basically, well, it's basically creating the tables and the probabilities of life insurance and insurance in general. So insurance is all based on probability, right? You show up with your motorbike, you're a young man, barely had your license for, you know, a year or so. How dangerous are you to yourself and to other people, and therefore how much do we have to charge you? And it's all probability.
Sounds like there's a lot of factors in that one.
There are.
Yeah. So did you ever have a motorcycle like growing up, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a dirt bike when I was a kid, and then when I was coming out of college, I had a Suzuki GS 400S for the purposes of a second vehicle with me and my wife. I got my license. My wife never did, but she continued to drive the vehicle all over the place.
Insurance, man, jeepers.
Little did the insurance companies know that she was driving with no license.
Yeah.
Foolish girl.
Yeah. Has there been a time in your life when you felt that you had failed completely at something? And if you did, how did you come back from that?
Well, I absolutely failed at plenty of things. So I had very high goals in sport, in playing in basketball, and there were a variety of times where I was awful on the basketball court. And, you know, it was a matter of the mental toughness to recognize that, okay, that game or that play or that quarter is done and we have to move forward to the next scenario. That's in sport. How about in abstract algebra, which is a course I had to complete successfully to get my mathematics major. And I took that course and failed it the first time through. And it was all pops and buzzes. Like, the course was so hard, I could not understand it. So I understand when students say, I just don't get it, because I did not get it. But I had to get it in order to get my degree. So I failed miserably. I had no clue what was going on. And I had to take the course a second time. And I still had to fight and scrap and really, 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 really work hard just to get a fair pass. It was hard. It was super hard.
So the concepts were difficult.
The concepts were difficult for me to wrap my brain around.
That's hard for me to understand. Like the algebra, like I've been taught, like hasn't been so terrible. But it's crazy to think that there's a new realm that I just don't know about.
Absolutely. And when I did my master's in math, same thing. There were some courses where it was like, yeah, no problem, I got this. Some courses where I had to work harder, and other courses where I just was like, whoa, this is beyond my brain. I just don't have those skills, or I don't have the prerequisite skills to be ready for it. And sometimes that's the case, right? Sometimes we just need more practice or more training in other things before we're ready for abstract algebra.
I'm looking forward to that.
I later took abstract algebra in my master's, and for whatever reason, all of a sudden, it clicked. So what was the difference, right? Is the difference just because my prefrontal cortex wasn't developed when I was 21 and taking abstract algebra the first time? And then when I was taking it as I was 45, was I just that much smarter? Or was it the grounding of 24 years of teaching high school mathematics that gave me a better understanding of the baselines to move forward into abstract algebra? In fact, what we're going into is a bit of abstract algebra after our integration test.
So how many schools have you been to?
What do you mean, been to? Like, took education from?
Like, I know you spent some time in Alberta, and you did your master's in Waterloo.
Yep. And I did a post-baccalaureate diploma in math and science at SFU.
So you've been about, which one has been your favorite experience?
Well, I would say, that's tough. I mean, U of A was awesome, simply because I was playing basketball at the same time, and basketball was a pretty major thing for me.
For those of you who don't know, Mr. Devries here is in the Alberta Hall of Fame. It's an absolute legend here. Who would you play with again? I forget the name.
Steve Nash.
Steve Nash.
He did not play with me in college, but we played together on BC Provincial team.
Yeah, and you totally crossed them up, right?
How many people are listening to this?
Hey man, it's a startup. It's a startup.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I will not. I mean, hey, we were both playing on the same team. We were on the same team. I didn't need to cross him up. He was the one dishing me the ball so I could shoot it.
So while you're in university, so you're balancing like your studies with like being an athlete. So how did you find that experience? Like, was it tough? How did you?
No, I didn't find it tough.
You didn't find it tough?
No. Well, I mean, you got to time manage yourself, right? And so it's not like it's unreasonable to be able to time manage yourself with sport. There's a lot of university students that will have a job. Well, that's not much different, right? Like, sport is going to require you at university to travel, so you're going to be away from home quite a bit. You got to be able to focus on the road and study. You got to be able to be disciplined enough to not just chill out in the hotel room sitting on your butt watching TV or Netflix. You got to do work. But it's totally manageable. There was a teammate of mine who was ahead of me, and at the time you had to get really good marks in year 1 and 2 to get into what the program of study he wanted in year 3. So he decided he was going to take a year off of basketball so that he could focus on getting the best marks he can in year 2 so he could get into his program in year 3. Any predictions on what happened to his marks?
I want to say they went up.
Of course.
Okay.
They plummeted because he had so much free time and he wasn't managing his time. He was just like, I got so much free time, I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll deal with it the next day, whatever. And his marks plummeted.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you look at students in high school, like typically the ones who are more successful academically are athletically inclined and are involved in
Totally
extracurricular activities.
Because they're forced to time manage. Like, right? If they are really focused on their sport and on succeeding in school, I mean, we get both of them, right? Some that aren't. But if you're focused, it's just a matter of managing your time.
Yeah,
You recognize, I got practice today. I got to study between 3 and 5 because I got practice tonight.
Yeah, I think there's that hit of pressure that just makes you like do the work.
Yeah.
All right, so I believe that's all those questions I had. So
All right.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No problem.
Right, so now your life experience. You've been around. Like didn't you sail the world at some point? Like,
No, I haven't sailed the world. No.
You biked across some continent.
I biked across the United States.
How old were you when you did that?
I was entering grade 9. So however old that is, 13 maybe.
Alright. When would you say, like, when was the youngest? When were you the youngest when you had like some crazy experience like that? Like, was that in grade 9 when you biked across the U.S. or?
Well, I mean, like, if that's a crazy experience, probably. That's a pretty intense experience, right? Because we did 100 miles a day, which is 160 kilometers every day, for 30 days. And we rode across the United States. And so,
Did you have any breaks? Like, did you stay in a hotel like at night? Or
no, we slept in tents. My mom drove a motorhome, and we threw the tents in the motorhome, and she would drive ahead of us, leave a pylon on the side of the road where she pulled off, and that's where we would pull off, and then we'd get lunch. And then we'd start biking, she'd clean up from lunch and drive ahead of us, pass us, put a pylon on the road, and we would stop for dinner.
Sounds like your mom was a pretty lovely woman.
She was a saint. That was a lot of work, because imagine doing that in oh goodness, what was that? Probably 87, maybe 86, something like that. So there's no cell phones. You got no internet. She's driving across the country with paper maps, trying to figure out where to get groceries. We're, of course, trying to take the quiet roads, not the interstates, because we don't want to be on roads with lots of traffic. So she's going through podunk towns with, is there even a grocery store in this town, right? So she had to figure it all out, and she did a killer job. It was pretty hard.
Yeah. So approximately. Who were you on the road with when you were biking?
Well, there was, I have 2 brothers, my father, so So that's 4 of us. And then there was a friend of my father's, a friend of my brother's, and some rando person that joined up.
You gotta love those.
Yeah, so we had 7 different people that were riding their bikes, and just kind of be however you were feeling that day, who you would join up with, and we always had to ride with a partner. Sometimes we rode with a group of 2 or 3, but it just kind of depended on the day and how it would go.
Cool. And in that experience, did you have any like moments where you were like, I want to go home?
Oh, absolutely. It didn't take long at all, because imagine if you're riding 100 miles a day every day, you at some point you're gonna have to ride over the Coquihalla per se, right? Have you ever been on the Coquihalla?
Yeah, it's very steep.
It's very steep, and it takes a long time to get over it. That's that's not the Continental Divide, but between Oregon and the Continental Divide, which is somewhere through Wyoming, right? That's the band of mountains that separate the water that flows east versus west. There's nothing but mountains. You're going up and down mountains all the time. So you're sitting on a bike seat, which is pretty tiny, hurts your butt quite a bit for about 8 hours a day. You're sitting on your hoods, right, with your hands, and your hands are just getting rubbed raw in those areas. And so yeah, there was plenty of times where I was biking up the mountains thinking, I just want to throw my bike over the side of the mountain. If I throw it over the side of the mountain, I won't have to ride, right? Because my dad's not going to buy me a new bike; it'll just be broken, and I'll have to sit in the motorhome with mom. So, yeah, there was lots of times I just wanted to quit.
So what made you like want to finish that? Like, was it like a pride thing, or like a competition with your brother, perhaps? Or?
Well, my brothers are 5 and 8 years older, so they were both in college. So they were much more physically capable to do the ride. I was a little pumped. So, but I was still able to do it. Like, it's just a matter of mental toughness, and it's kind of like, I don't know. There's got to be things in your family where you just do them because it's what you're doing, right? And of course, having older brothers, you don't want to be like the weak one, right? You want to at least match them. So, I mean, they rode faster than me most days, but I still rode it. So,
And that's like a new experience. Like I said, what impresses me the most about that, I've spent a fair amount of time on bike. Like I do triathlons and like longer distance running and whatnot. So in the triathlon particularly, I spent so much time training like on the bike.
yeah.
And my bosom was hurting, man. So for you to be out there for 30
Your
days,
bosom.
the posterior was struggling, man.
Yeah.
So for you to be out there for 30 days, like that must have been tough.
It was really tough. It was really tough. You bike for 4 hours in the morning, you get lunch, you have a little nap, you get up, you bike for another 4 hours, you have dinner, you crash in your tent, and you're just dead to the world until the next morning, and you repeat it. But it's pretty cool, right? We got to see the whole country. It's amazing how you experience the country when you're going across it on a bike. Because you can drive the Coquihalla in an hour and a half, and it's a beautiful stretch of road. But you've done it in an hour and a half. You go bike that Coquihalla, whew, you get to experience it in a different way, right?
But you really appreciate like the slope, the derivatives.
The derivatives?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to
ride
drive this a
that
couple
down
more
zero.
times and bring it down to 0, right?
Yeah. So you also have experience sailing, is that correct?
Well, I used to have a sailboat, yes, but nothing major, just like a little race sailboat kind of thing.
A race? Did you ever take one to race? Or?
Not to race specifically, but just for fun.
Okay.
So, we would sail, my wife and I, and we would tip it often, and then I would have to go pick her up because she jumped off or fallen off. And, it was just a little laser, probably about the size of, well, not any bigger than this set of desks. But you can get going pretty fast and have some fun.
So is that the type of boat that you take trips on, or just like go out for the joyride?
No, just joy rides.
Just joyrides?
Yeah.
Right. And where was that situated?
Where?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up with this laser at home in Nelson on Kootenai Lake, and then we also had one that we played with on Cultus and on Harrison Lake.
Bye. I'm gonna go over here then.
Okay, have a good prom.
Thank
See you later.
You too. Just kidding.
You gonna listen to the rest of the podcast later?
She
Yes.
better. Are you subscribed yet? This is Eve, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll test you, I'm gonna throw in a question.
Throw in a question, sure, okay.
Yeah.
How much longer are you doing?
I'm not sure. We'll find out soon.
Okay. I'm like, how much do I have to study for my question on Monday? I feel like, that might be right.
Okay.
Actually, let's just, I know we can do.
It's an interesting method of solution. Very interesting method of solution. We should talk about that in the future.
Okay, have a good day.
Cool, you too?
So after you're graduating high school and you're going into post-secondary education, you're going to the U of A for basketball. What were some experiences like playing basketball?
Well, that was an amazing time. Okay, so I came out of high school from a small town. My team was okay. Like we went to provincials, but we played in like this lower tier, and we placed 5th. But to give you a perspective, I averaged 38 points a game in high school. So, and in one game I scored 82.
82.
Yeah, the other team had 72, so I beat them. That was fun. So, but I only bring that up because, like, okay, as far as high school goes, I was awesome. Like, I was awesome, right? And so then I go to university, and I was not awesome because they were bigger, older, stronger, better. And so, you know, I went from playing basically every minute of every game to sitting on the bench and having to earn my playing time, right? Because I wasn't good enough and I had to improve. And so I was really tempted to quit because it was just a shock to my system, right? And, but fortunately I had a coach that was in a similar way to me and my students, was challenging, right? At one point early on in the season, he just took me aside and he said, this is not the person I recruited. Like, you are not, you're not even trying in the same way as the person I recruited. And that was a real challenge to me because he was right. Like I was, rather than doing my best and trying my hardest to improve, I was kind of just being satisfied to be on the team. And, you know, if I don't really try, then I can't really fail, right? That's what a lot of people think in their brain. If I'm not really trying and I don't get the playing time, well, then I didn't fail because I chose not to really try. And so he called me out on it, and he held up that mirror to say, hey, dude, like, this is not who I recruited. This is not who you are, so what are you going to do about it? And so that really challenged me, and it took me, I mean, from that point on, I would like to think that, yeah, I changed my attitude and I worked hard, but it didn't mean that I got playing time. Like, I still didn't get playing time until a full year. Like, it took me a full year of development before I actually earned playing time on the court. And so it was a process, right? Like, I came in very highly touted. You don't score 38 points in average that in high school without thinking you're awesome and without being highly touted. But then when you go sit on the bench and stuff. And so, but it was hard work for me to A, change the attitude, B, do the work to get better and actually earn the playing time to play with.
So this shock you're talking about, I hear a lot in athletes who are going to play in a higher level. And right now I'm going to UBC. I'm like the top 3 prospect for rugby, and I'm expecting to experience the shock. So do you have any words of advice for me doing this?
Well, I think number one, recognize that it's probably going to happen, right? You mentioned it actually after you went and played with Canada stuff, right? You mentioned like just the size of them and their power and their speed, and you were kind of a little surprised, right? But so in the same way, I would encourage you to recognize it's going to happen. In fact, if it's not happening, maybe you chose the wrong place to go play, right? Because are you the best player that you ever want to be right now? Probably not, right? You probably, while you think you're good, it's great, but you should want to improve. And as such, if you're going to improve, just like in calculus or in any other course or thing that you're pursuing, you need to be challenged. And so these better people, these stronger people, these older people, they're smarter maybe on how they play. They're going to challenge you. So recognize that it's going to happen, and then be willing to fight for it, right? Not that you're fighting as a loser, but you're fighting to compete, right? That you're like, okay, what can I learn from this guy? What can I learn from this guy? What can I learn from my coach? How do I apply that? And just continue to look at improvement.
Okay, so don't shy down from the challenge.
No. If you shy away from the challenge, you're never going to get to where you want to be.
Right? Great advice.
Well, thanks. I lived it. I shied away from the challenge for a while. And if I had continued to do that, I would never have had the experiences that I did. I would have continued to be sitting on the bench, or I might have been cut in the future. There's no question about it.
All right.
Somebody asked me, before you go, I will like, somebody mentioned something about goals and the other day. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I reached any of my goals at university. And yet, like you said, I've been a national champion 2 times. I've been an MVP. I've been a Canada West All-Star multiple times. Been in the Hall of Fame. I didn't achieve any of my goals. My goals were higher than what I achieved. It doesn't make me a failure. It just means that I really had high goals. Like, one of my goals was to be Player of the Year in Canada. I didn't achieve that. Somebody else got it, right? One of my goals was to, complete certain statistical things in the season. I didn't complete those. I was close. Didn't quite make it, right? But, so, not failure.
Yeah.
But I just had high goals.
Yeah, that reminds me of something one of my middle school teachers told me, and they said if you aim for the stars, you hit the moon, but it's still a lot farther than if you would have aimed to the moon and then you would have landed in the atmosphere.
There you go. It's that corny poster, right? And in most teachers' classrooms.
Yeah.
Set high goals. Go achieve them. And once you achieve them, I mean, let's face it, I had other goals in them, right? One of them would have been after the first month figuring out how my goal is to actually earn playing time. So yeah, I achieved that goal. I did achieve some goals, but some of my other goals I didn't. So once you reach those goals, then reassess, make new ones. Keep pushing yourself. Just like as a teacher, I always have goals to get my students to do better. Like, it's not, if you look at your calculus workbook compared to last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago, it's totally different. Because I'm constantly changing things because I think I can make them better.
It's good. You got a good open mindset, growth mindset.
Growth mindset, that's right. Our brains can always grow. Too many students think that it can't. But we're not created in a fixed, static position. We have to be willing to strive to achieve.
It's great words, man. Great words. All right, thank you so much for agreeing to be on this podcast.
You're welcome.
I learned a lot.
Hope you got what you wanted.
I definitely did got more than I was expecting. That was fun.
There you go. Wow.
Time for calculus.
What's that?
Time for calculus.